Thank you to Sakuraco and TokyoTreat for sponsoring today's video. Hi guys, and welcome back to another video. So I feel like it's been a while since I've done like an iPad, kind of more like not a full illustration per se, but you know, drawing something on my iPad type of video. So I have these drawings in my Genshin folder of like ones that I did previously of Lohen, and I thought I was gonna do an illustration, or not an illustration, I thought I was going to do a sketch page today, but I have a different kind of urge that I want to do, and that's to make another photo card, which I will not be showing the photo card kind of like making process in this video. I feel like I have a few videos already covering that topic, so if you're interested, you can check those out. But I just wanted to let you guys know, since I'll be using pretty much the same template in terms of the size as these Moo business cards, which I usually use for the format and size and just like the aspect ratio for my photo cards. So today we are going to be drawing Lohen, or Lohen? Lohen. I feel like so many people like this character, and me included, but as you guys know, I'm still behind in Genshin. I think I'm gonna take July to try to catch up both in Star Rail and in Genshin, because I'm gonna be taking a little bit of a step back from my commissions and all that while I work on Art Fight and just like normal video stuff, and occasionally some other things. Like probably my store will be open sometime in July, I'm hoping, so that's also hopefully gonna free up some time for me so I can probably catch up. But so in terms of the sketch itself, I am starting off with kind of like the painting brush that I use to put down my flats and all of my rough coloring to plan out the pose and just like the general positioning for Lohen, because I want to have a good idea before we actually start with the cleaner sketch. Now, right in the very beginning, you would have saw that this was not the pose that I was aiming for. I was gonna do something that was a little bit darker, but I feel like it would fit better into an illustration that has two pieces, if that makes sense. And because we're focusing mostly on a photo card today, I just want to make sure that his face is visible and at a very specific size, so that it's visible on a smaller scale, like on a card, like a physical card. So we're gonna keep kind of the illustration in terms of like pose, and mostly it's just like a bust up, so it's very simple for the most part. And I was just like really wanting to draw Lohen again because he's just a fun character, and I mean fun as in like very interesting, very different, I guess, from a lot of the other Genshin characters. So if you're not really liking the type of characters that are a little bit more he's kind of crazy, and I guess more leaning towards like darker themes, in the sense that I guess he's not having any issues with harming people. I don't know if there's like a better way of putting it, with which won't like, you know, make people entirely uncomfortable. But I feel like if you're somebody who's like into Genshin, probably already aware of how Lohen is. He's kind of off his rocker, but you know, a lot of people like him, including me. So I wanted to draw him once again, but we're gonna keep it a little bit more slightly cutesy. He's very much associated with like a bunny or a rabbit, so I wanted to also include the little ears. I've seen plenty of people draw him with ears in the past, and I've definitely sketched him with the little bunny ears before as well. Oh, also, I went through so many iterations of this hand because nothing looked correct. I think it's also because I have all the fingers visible when it's kind of like almost a profile or a side view of the hand. I think that's like my main issue, but I kept drawing each individual finger like being fully visible, which kind of made the hand not look super correct. But I just ended up speeding up the footage for the most part, because you guys might as well see how many times I've drawn the hand over and over for this particular sketch. So also another heads up, I think not until I start rendering, his face is gonna look a little bit like misaligned. I'm gonna correct it at the very end, but it's not gonna be visible in the time lapse or in the final illustration until literally the last frames, I feel like, of the video will have kind of like the finished illustration at its finest. But like in the video footage itself, you're not gonna see it until it's like tweaked a little bit later. So that's just kind of like a mini heads up for you guys. I feel like because I've been making more photo cards, I've been leaning more towards like just doing bust ups. I feel like I usually gravitate towards that regardless because I like drawing faces and heads the most. But definitely more so with like the idol themes. I've been definitely catering it more towards something that has like the face very visible, usually having like hands or like interesting lighting, all that, just because it fits better in terms of like the format and the size for photo cards, because they are about like maybe 2.5 by 3.3 inches, I think is somewhere around that size. I tend to draw it a lot larger so that I can shrink it down, just because working on like a 2.5 by 3.3 canvas is like uber tiny, so it'll be easier for me to just work on something that's, I think, slightly bigger than a 5 by 7. I think it's like slightly wider. So technically, for all of my photo cards, I can make them into prints as well. But right now my focus is photo cards because one, I enjoy making them, but two, they're just easier for me to make at home. And because like in my city, I do have a consignment shelf set up, it's easier for me to restock like smaller items. So like right now I've been enjoying making the photo cards because I feel like more people are interested in them. So it seems. But I feel like the sketching process, minus the one hand that's like touching his face, was pretty smooth, like and easy going. I didn't have too many issues at that point, but I feel like, you know, this is an okay sketch for now. With the sketch done, let's talk about some snacks before we start to color Lohen. Time to experience limited edition and seasonal snacks from Japan from the comfort of your own home with these lovely monthly snack boxes. TokyoTreat is a fun and exclusive monthly snack box that is packed with some of Japan's coolest and funnest treats. Each month, you'll get a Japan-exclusive premium snack, a limited edition chip, and noodles. The theme for this box is a very kind of like cute retro theme vibe, which I really love. In general, I really like this aesthetic. While Sakuraco is a monthly Japanese artisan snack box that supports local snack makers across Japan. Each box is carefully crafted with traditional and seasonal snacks that are hard to come by outside of Japan, like mochi, dorayaki, senbei, and even more. I'm already excited about some of these snacks as I really love these soft milk candies. The box also includes a signature Japanese tea and exclusive homeware item. The homeware item for this month is the Kobachi bowl, and I'm always a fan of these blue and white kind of like ceramic designs, so this one's actually inspired by chrysanthemums that symbolizes elegance and nobility. Both boxes come with a 24-page cultural guide booklet, and it includes information regarding ingredients and allergens of each of the snacks, but also informs you of little tidbits revolving around culture and traditions in Japan. I feel like Hokkaido, at least for me, is kind of one of those dream Japan locations that I would love to visit one day. I'm excited to read more about it here in this booklet though. Each month has a different theme, meaning that you get to try out a whole new selection of new treats and snacks every month. For example, TokyoTreat's theme for the month of June is Tokyo Throwback, while Sakuraco's box is Summer in Hokkaido. As usual, let's go ahead and try out the Sakuraco tea. I think I've only really tried a tea with azuki beans or like red bean once before this, so I'm excited to try this one out, and I'm actually really glad, but this one in particular is caffeine free, but also this one is a lot more sweet versus some just like normal herbal teas and stuff because of the natural sweetness from the beans itself. As for the snacks, TokyoTreat has a lot of cute kind of like retro themed snacks that I really do love. But I'm a fan of cheese a lot, so I really like these twisty cheese bites. They were very much right up my alley in terms of flavor profile, as they are very cheesy but have a little bit of that sweetness that goes along with it. But also, for the retro theme specifically, the cute kind of like camera ramune candy, I find the way that it dispenses the candy so cute, and I can never go wrong with the taste of ramune candy. Well, for Sakuraco, I was excited to see the Hokkaido soft milk candy. For me, as like a child and up until probably like when I was a teenager, this was kind of like a staple for me whenever I went to like the Asian grocery stores. So I'm very happy to see this one here. It has like a really nice soft, kind of like not gooey texture per se, but it has like the perfect amount of sweetness, and I always like kind of like that milk flavor. So this one's definitely one of my favorites. I also ended up trying one of the Kit Kats where they were more like banana pudding-ish flavor, if anything. And then we have the Taiho crackers. Were also very delicious and crunchy as well, as I'm also a fan of things that are more like savory sweet. So these ones kind of have like that very sweet alongside with like a soy sauce ish kind of flavor, so this one's really nice. So If you would like to get a box for yourself or want to give these as a lovely gift to your family or friends or your partner, then do check out the links in the description. Thank you again to Sakuraco and TokyoTreat for sponsoring today's video. Now let's figure out the colors for Lohen. So now with the sketch done, we can move on to the coloring. So for the coloring, I usually do the same setup. So I will duplicate my sketch if I want to preserve one, just in case if I want to redo the coloring. We'll make the second version of our sketch set to multiply. I will then change the line art color most likely to be, well, I keep saying line art, it's more of my sketch color to be a lot lighter, and then we'll make a new layer, pop it below, and we can start doing the background colors. I like having the background colors to help kind of like establish lighting and just like color temperature in general. Sometimes I will heavily influence the color of like Lohen or like the character more so afterwards with using like multiply and add layer, screen, and overlay to help adjust some of the color temperature, adjust the intensity of lighting, putting people into shadow, all that stuff. So it just helped to give me like a very good base for the most part so that I can keep stuff in the back of my mind. Otherwise, if I'm not using as many blend modes, having the background fully established to a certain degree will help me pick my shadow colors or any lighting situation, or figuring out like in, I guess, the background I wanted to have like red lighting, so we can add kind of like that red magenta-ish color into the rest of his clothing if I wanted to, and all that. So it just helps you get a little bit more informed about what colors you could place back into the characters or whatever you have in the I guess like an object within the background, I guess. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. After that, we can move along to actually coloring Lohen himself. So I will make a new layer above the background layer, and we'll use the lasso tool to quickly fill in usually the skin tone color. So I'm starting off with a very pale kind of base, and then I will alpha lock everything after I make sure I erase and add all of the selected areas that I want to have like to be in color. And alpha locking it just helps keep everything kind of like contained within that kind of like first initial flat base color that I initially put down. After that, we can go ahead and start to shade. And in terms of like the order, I like going from skin to eyes to hair to clothing and anything else. After that, we can just like, you know, finalize some details and pretty much get it prepped for doing our blend mode layers. So that's where I will use like multiply to put things in the shadow. We can use some add layer or screen layer to help add rim lighting or fancy lighting or just brightening things up, and then overlay to kind of like color adjust before we move on to rendering. So for the most part, I always call this stage rough colors, but I kind of always keep in mind that I need my colors and the way how I shade and add lighting to be in a good place so that I have an easier time finishing up things and rendering and cleaning up and sharpening things. Otherwise, it's going to be a lot of heavy lifting later on. So to hopefully lessen the burden in the last few steps, we're just going to try our best to, you know, make things very clear on how I want them to look. So adding in where my hair shines are, adding in shadows for, you know, different sections of the hair, because for the most part when I'm actually doing like the full-on render in the later half of this video, it's easier for me to have like the general kind of like larger areas established, and then all I have to do is sharpen things up. I'm adding more detail, we're fixing the shapes, we're adding in more contrast, and just like redefining everything a little bit further. Because I've already talked about this before, that back when I was in like uni and we had like our drawing courses and stuff, because I was an art major, when we were doing rendering, we were told that rendering is more like the process of finalizing your piece. Because I know some people, I guess maybe it is depending on maybe like my professor's definition of what rendering is versus like other people's definition of rendering is adding shading and adding your lighting and stuff. But you can do that in a very rough way, and I wouldn't call that rendering per se. Like you can add shadow and lighting in a thumbnail, but you wouldn't say that your thumbnail is rendered per se, if that makes sense. I mean, you probably could have like a rendered thumbnail, but a lot of it's like very much kept very loose. I think nowadays everyone considers like kind of like detailing, cleaning things up, bringing it up to like a certain finish is, or at least that's how I perceived it, is always bringing it up to a certain finish, and that finish is like up to you whether or not you want it to be like super polished or you just want to redefine certain things, sharpen areas. You might leave some other areas like very loose and very out of focus maybe. So it's like very much up to your own discretion, which is why I feel like there's not really like a finite or like a definite definition of a person being like, is my art fully rendered per se? Because I feel like it's very much tailored to the individual. Because even when like you use the term render for like rendering a video, it's not you doing all the editing per se. It's kind of like the finalizing everything, putting it together, is the rendering process of when you're exporting your video. So I always deem it as more of like towards the final step, because I know a lot of people's like rendering or fully rendered drawing and like when they're about to render, it looks vastly different. I feel like I should post a picture of that, because I think I mentioned to an art mutual of mine that I feel like I'm low-key catfishing in terms of like doing the before and after. So at this point, as I'm coloring in kind of like our sketch lines, I'm lining everything up, because during the rendering portion, I like to manually darken things up to add however much, I guess, like contrast that I want to for the lines. And some areas here, you can see I'm adding some extra shadows. I'm keeping everything still like somewhat rough. But this is kind of what my sketch kind of looks like prior to rendering, and it looks pretty different in my opinion to like the final drawing, which is why I like to joke that it looks like I'm catfishing, because the person just looks vastly different than what it initially kind of looked, or what you might think it might look. So before we merge everything down, at this point, I've already merged my sketch layer with the colored lines to my rough colors. So that layer is fully merged, and then I will clip new layers to that fully merged kind of two layers together and add in my blend mode. So this will be my multiply layer to help cast a bit of a shadow onto Lohen, as well as adding our red lighting, and I added a overlay layer on top of everything to help balance out the colors a little bit. I know a lot of you guys like how I use my colors, and partly it is because of, I think, like a few final touches that I add at the very end, because I do intensify colors a smidge with an overlay layer anywhere between, I want to say 20 and 30, or even 20 and 40%, leaving the opacity around there so that it's not like full intensity, but it kind of helps like brighten the colors like just ever so slightly, so that it brings a little bit more vibrancy to everything. So that's usually just my preference. I'm usually pretty okay with the colors that I initially am using, like at this point where I'm rendering and I have all my layers pretty much merged down, and I like to render and clean up and sharpen everything kind of on the same layer. And I've only really picked up this kind of mentality, and I've talked about this before, because in the past I would have gripes about like why I would merge my layers, or why some people might want to have a new layer made on top and you render on top. There's like good benefits of having your stuff separated, just in case like you're not like fully locked into everything, right? But I feel like if you have a little bit more of like the painterly way of coloring, then you're not using like a whole bunch of layers per se, in terms of needing like the base color, then shadows, and then lighting, all that. We kind of already established all of that prior, and you can definitely do that and then render or paint on top as well. That's always like an option. And I always struggle between trying to find a way where I can incorporate more cleaner colors and cleaner lines and still keep my style and rendering kind of like the same, because I always like the look of it more, but I don't like sometimes how some of my areas, let's say hair or clothing, get lost in terms of like detail and stuff, just because I don't feel like rendering it to the full ability. And I always have to do a lot of like back and forth for painting because I might be accidentally painting over my lines, and then I have to go back in, put my lines back, and then maybe I want to paint over it again, and then it's a lot of back and forth. While if you have your line work and your colors separate, or I guess if you render or paint over on a separate layer, you might have a little bit more leeway in terms of like correcting and fixing. I think when I first started doing more like digital painting instead of like actual drawing, I started to minimize the amount of layers that I started to use, but I never really started doing that until I started using Procreate and the iPad specifically. And it's mostly because I always had a smaller iPad. It's my preferred size because it's easier for me for portability's sake. It fits perfectly in my bag, like I mentioned many times in the past, and I don't really see a need to go a lot bigger at this point. But the other thing is that I had a 32 gigabyte iPad for the longest time. And because of that, the amount of layers that you have for certain sizes, like canvas sizes and stuff for Procreate, gets very limited. If you go bigger, you get less layers. If you go smaller, you have more layers. But I feel like it's also dependent on your device's memory or your storage. So because I only had the 32 gig at the time, I tried to make sure that I could use as little layers as possible and merging things together. And one of the biggest mistakes that I did, especially when I first did like a lot of my Genshin drawings, was that I merged my character and pretty much like at the rough color stage where I merged my sketch and my colors together, I would merge it with my background. And that prevented me from doing like detailed backgrounds because I didn't want to erase around the character and have to repaint in the background. So, you know, find ways to help yourself make your process a lot easier by using more layers. But for me, I like opening up my layers window a lot less, so being able to render and just color pick and erase on the same layer just makes it a lot easier for my workflow. But we're in the kind of like final stages of this drawing. So one thing I did is duplicate both the background and Lohen together, and then I ended up Gaussian blurring it and then softening it up and erasing some areas that I wanted to keep in focus. That way I can have some edges to have a little bit more of that blurry softness. I lowered the opacity so it's not fully blurred. Then after that, we add in our last kind of like overlay layer, which is kind of the layer that intensifies all the color just like ever so more than it was already. So if you guys kind of like the bright color look, play around with some of the blend modes on your digital art program to see what works for you. I usually lower it to about anywhere between 20 to 40 like I mentioned earlier, so that everything's not too intense. But yeah, here's the finished illustration of Lohen for today that I'm going to make into a photo card. Comparison to my previous version of Lohen right here. They look very different. And then this is the sketch page, which I think this is way before he was like actually properly introduced, so I didn't really know his personality too well. But yeah, I might do one more drawing of Lohen, or I guess like a set of two, because I want to do the one where he has kind of like the gun with the lily coming out of it for an illustration. I just don't know if I wanted to do it for a video specifically, especially because this one's a sponsored one technically. So yeah, that's it for today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed watching me draw Lohen, and once again, reminder that even though this is the time-lapse portion, the illustration at the very end will have more of like his tweaked face, because he does get a little bit wonky looking once I started doing the rendering. But thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you guys next time in the next video. Bye!